Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg. This is week 14 of my 100 book challenge, where I have challenged myself to read 100 books that I already own before buying another book. I am currently at book 69, soon to finish book 70. We'll see how this week goes. Behind me, it's a very lovely sunrise. I have finished my 70th book, Carpenters Gothic by William Gaddis, originally published in 1985. This is Gaddis's third novel. It is set in a house on the Hudson River. The house is owned by a mysterious geologist named McKendless and is rented by Paul and Liz, husband and wife. Paul and Liz are having some problems. There was a plane accident that they survived a while ago, and apparently Liz was injured in this accident and cannot perform her wifely duties. And so Paul is getting out to sue the airline company for a lot of money. And then it goes on from there. And I will say that the characters of Paul and Liz are really not likable characters. Paul is a really detestable, angry man, prone to ranting. And Liz has her own issues. She's not always truthful. She's going to see a lot of doctors and building up a lot of doctor bills. And really not sure why she's going to all these doctors. And Paul's really upset with her. And then comes McKendless, the strange geologist who owns the house, who has a locked room in the house that Paul and Liz are not supposed to go into, where he keeps all his papers. And some of these papers are rather important to some mysterious men, a man by the name of Lester. And you eventually get to meet Lester, and you get to hear him, McKendless, rant and rave about issues and politics and money. And this book is absolutely hilarious. Now, it is not the kind of novel that most people are going to enjoy, I think. It's not heavily plot-driven, although there is a plot in the background, because most of this book is just characters talking to each other, ranting to each other. Gaddis likes to have his characters rant, and I love those rants. They're very amusing. But anyway, the reader has to slowly pick out what is the meaning behind these rants. What are the details behind the rants? Because there is a story being told indirectly, and it's up to the reader to pull all these misdirections and just slight hints into a coherent story. No. Is this Gaddis's best book? No. I think J.R. and The Recognitions are better books. But this might be more enjoyable in some ways because it's rather condensed. Recognitions and J.R. are both under 800 pages, and this one is under 300 pages. So you can get the idea, the flavor of Gaddis in these 300 pages without going through the longer books. The bad side of this book is it's shorter because it really was fun to read this book. As I said, I love the rants. Even though the characters are kind of despicable, I kind of like them that way because you can like disliking characters. At least I think so. I would give this an absolute rave review, with the caveat that this book really is not for everyone. I have finished my 71st book. This is not a book that I actually have to show. It is a collection of the 12 favorite Sherlock Holmes stories that Arthur Conan Doyle picked himself as his top 12. I own the complete works of Sherlock Holmes on my Kindle, but I don't own an actual book that contains just the 12 short stories. Mark at Book Time for Elvis claims that he has such a book. It's called like the 5 Orange Pips and Other Stories. That's just the 12 favorite stories of Sherlock Holmes as picked by Arthur Conan Doyle. So I just looked those up on the internet and I read those 12 stories. And I'm calling that my 71st book. And I have them all on my Kindle. They're all here. I have the complete works of Arthur Conan Doyle on my Kindle. So what did I think of these 12 stories? Well, the short stories of Sherlock Holmes as a whole are absolutely fantastic. The 12 stories that I read are all pretty darn good. I don't think there was a real dud in the bunch. It ranges from anything from the Speckled Band, the Red-Headed League, the 5 Orange Pips, the 2 right down to the Priory School. Now, my favorite would not be Doyle's favorite. He picked the Speckled Band as his favorite short story. I still think mine would be A Scandal in Bohemia. The Red-Headed League was still up there. And that was his second. And I might pick that as my second, too. But all in all, I would absolutely give the short stories of Sherlock Holmes a rave review. I am sure if I delved deeper into the au revoir of stories, I would find some lesser stories that I did not enjoy as much. But these 12 stories, they were just a fantastic read. I've been derelict in my duties. Content creators, or at least some content creators, are going to know this feeling that I've had over part of this week. It's when you should be recording a video and capturing your opinions about what you've been reading, but you just feel like doing something else. Well, I've had that feeling. So now it's the end of the week, and I have 3 books to squeeze into one filming or recording session. I am done with my 72nd book, The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. I say done because I guess this is really a DNF, although it's not quite a DNF. The King in Yellow is a collection of short stories. And I've been reading the first few short stories with the Gothic horror group run by Vin at Revenant Reads. And the first 4 stories of this collection are horror short stories. From what I've been told, and from other people in the group, and in comments on the internet, the other stories really are not horror stories. They increasingly become literary and romantic. So with all the books that I want to read, I've just decided that I have read the stories of this collection that I want to read. So it's sort of a DNF, sort of a set aside, whatever you want to call it, because I just don't think I'd be interested in those other short stories. But the first 4 short stories are worth your while, I think. The first one, and it's the title of it is escaping me for a moment, but it starts off with a man talking about the early part of the 20th century. And I'm reading through this, and it's just not quite right. He's going, this author really doesn't know his history. And then I looked up when the stories were published. This book was originally published in 1895. So this is sort of a science fiction story as well, because he's talking about the future. It is a future in some ways eerily similar to our own right now. and in some ways spooky, because there's this play called The King in Yellow, which leads to madness. And I really liked that story. I wasn't expecting to be that good. Now, the second two stories, Masks, and I believe the other one was called In the Court of the Dragon, those really weren't very good stories. They were passable, I guess, but nothing worth commenting on. But the fourth story, The Yellow Sign, is probably Robert W. Chambers' most famous short story, and it is a doozy. It's a really good story. It is the story of an artist, I think it's New York City, and he's painting a model, and she is a nude model. And when I got to thinking about this, his banter and his affection towards this nude model is really rather progressive for that day and age. But there's this man across the street that the artist sees. He's sort of decrepit. He's in front of the old church, and his artist model has been having dreams of being carried along in a coffin. And then she gives him a little gift that she found on the street, a little memento, and it's an odd symbol, the yellow sign, and that's going to lead to total madness and mayhem. Great short story. And that is what I'm doing for the King in Yellow collection. I have finished my 73rd book, Human-Shaped Fiends by Chandler Morrison. This was published a few years ago, I think. Chandler Morrison is more known for his first novel, Dead Inside, which includes cannibalism, necrophilia. And this book, The Human-Shaped Fiends, is what's known as a splatter Western. This is where you try to combine the extreme horror genre with a Western. And I'm not quite sure it worked all that well. In part of this, you start off with a Western with that horror elements, those extreme horror elements. And then you get these interludes where you get a character called Chandler Morrison, who was an author trying to write a splatter Western. And he's having some difficulties with his splatter Western because he doesn't really not know where to go with the Western. How true that interlude is to the real Chandler Morrison, I'm not positive, but the Western itself doesn't really fit that well. There are some really grim and gross elements that definitely make this an extreme horror book. There are vicious murders, vicious sexual assaults, which I guess is just what Chandler Morrison is known for. And there is a lot of references to Cormac McCarthy. There is a main character named Grady, which is, of course, the first name of Grady Cole from All the Pretty Horses and Cities on the Plain, which are two of Cormac McCarthy's very well-known novels. There is references to the Judge from Blood Meridian in here. And there's a character. I'm thinking, is that the Judge? I don't know. Between the splatter Western, the horror, and the metafiction, I don't really think this was all that successful of a novel, but it's easy to read. I kind of enjoyed it. I just don't think it's all that good. I think Chandler Morrison is an acquired taste for some people and some readers. I have finished my 74th book, Hunt by Alexandra Nisneru. This is known as the book one in the Monster Hunters book. This is her first published work. It is really more of a novella than a novel. I don't think she's published anything else. Now, the problem with this is that it's either a horror or a dark fantasy. I think it's more of a dark fantasy rather than horror. It starts off with a brother and a sister. They're in their mid to late 20s, and they are monster hunters. Apparently, in the real world, there are vampires, there are werewolves, there are ghosts, there are demons, there are other creatures that need to be hunted and killed. Then it sort of flashes back to when they were about 10 years ago, and they were just teenagers, and the daughter, Emily, catches her mother in an alley, or she's with her mother in an alley when the mother is attacked by a vampire. And it's turning into a vicious battle. But the vampire gets his teeth on Emily, and Emily's mother says, "Take me instead of my daughter. Blood is always better when you don't fight." So the vampire gives up the daughter and takes the mother. You know. So then you go back to the 10 years, and Emily and her brother are now dedicated monster hunters, and they're on their hunt for a demon down in Louisiana. And things go awry. Now, my problem with this is that this reads like a pastiche, that the author is taking her source material from somewhere else. Maybe it's a TV show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something like that, or a movie, or a role-playing game, maybe some other novel. It just feels like the reader is expected to know this world and the rules of this world more than is just in the text that I picked out. Now, maybe this is just common in this genre. I guess it would be like I said, urban fantasy, dark fantasy, that there's lots of rules that people follow. And not having read much, I'm just totally lost. And that gives me the sense that it's part of something bigger that I just don't understand. Now, as for the writing, well, it's an author's first published work. You've got to give her a little bit of ease for that, because it's hard to write, it's hard to get published, and your first published work is rarely going to be your best. But my big problem is that there are absolutely no characterizations in this. There's the brother, Emily. The sister's Emily. The brothers, I've already forgotten his name, even though I read it last night. And they have no identifying characteristics. The only thing I can say is the big brother likes to call his sister M instead of Emily, and he admits that she is the better monster hunter, but he's very protective of her. He's a good big brother. That's really all I can say that distinguishes him, which is really not very much. I would hope that this author gets a little more detail. There's actually what I think 3 stories in this short novella. There is the origin story of Emily, and the vampire and her mother, and how that came about. And there's another page or two where her brother and Emily go seek out the vampire that killed their mother. And then there's a story that makes up this actual novella proper. I think this should have been at least 3 stories. I think the author just tried to squeeze too much into too short of a work, a novella, when it really should have been a bit longer, a little more fleshed out in detail for people like me who just do not know the genre. I really have to give this a pan. I'm sorry about that. It's author's first work, and I hope she does better in the future. Well, anyway, that's going to be a wrap for week 14. Wow. Really getting late into the game, because next week is week 15, obviously, and let's see how I do. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.